Hello everyone, Yannick Pelletier here, Grandmaster from Switzerland, and in this video I'm going to take a look at the following game from the World Chess Candidates Tournament 2018 and in Berlin. This is round 2 between Alexander Grischuk from Russia and Wesley So from the United States. A very important game already for both players because they both lost their first round. Grischuk against Kramnik, Wesley So against Caruana. So here they have lost, and it's very crucial for both of them to try and fight back. Wesley So with the black pieces certainly would be happy because he doubled black pieces in the beginning of the candidates he played in the first round, also with black, and now also in this second round with black. And a very tough situation usually. In Grischuk with white now, certainly going to try for something. So Grischuk plays e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5. Well, definitely the Ruy Lopez, the main line against e5. And here, no Berlin defense, no knight f6. Wesley So goes for a6, bishop a4, knight f6, castle, bishop e7, and d3. Well, that's an important moment already. When he plays d3, white says that he's going to try and play a slower game, not going for the faster plan c3 and d4, which he would play after rook e1 first and perhaps h3, c3, d4. Basically the main plan, the most aggressive plan, but of course black has ways to fight against that. So d3, let's call it a more flexible way for white to play. b5, bishop b3, d6, c3, castle, h3, bishop b7, knight bd2, rook e8. You can see white has waited before playing d4. He first wants to rearrange his pieces. Perhaps an idea would be rook e1, knight f1, bringing the knight to g3, or perhaps even to e3, maybe even developing the bishop first, and only then to play d4. This is a very valid option as well. But here Grischuk decided to play knight g5, hitting the f7 pawn, rook f8, and here rook e1. In this position, I think Wesley So took a very risky decision. Perhaps his next move was even a bit hasty. I think knight a5 would be a very decent continuation here, forcing the bishop to leave this very active diagonal, going back to c2 and now c5. Well, you can play d5 later on if you want to. I think this would have been a better continuation. Instead of this, he went for d5 immediately, opening the center like this. Well, you need to make sure that everything is under control, and I believe that after e takes d5, knight takes d5. Here, after the strong move knight df3, white is developing an initiative quite clearly, and it's important, you know, black has refrained from playing h6 to kick away the knight from g5, so Grischuk tries to maintain it as long as possible. Well, he has some pressure against f7, maybe in some lines even he could hope to have some ideas against h7. So this knight on g5, well protected at the moment, definitely disturbs black a little bit. Wesley So played queen d7. Well, taking the pawn here on e5 is not possible. It's a piece after knight takes, and f6 black is going to win material. So here a very strong move by Grischuk. I think he seized and felt the moment when he needed to take concrete measures. And here by playing d5, he actually breaks open the center before black is fully mobilized. Well, e takes d4 has to be, c takes d4. Well, this is the best way to take back this. This was the idea of Grischuk. He's now left with this isolated pawn on d4, which can turn into a weakness later in the game if black manages to exchange pieces and perhaps even reach an endgame. This pawn on d4 could turn out to be weak, but at the moment that all pieces are still on the board, so activity is paramount, and there are some positional factors as well. This square on e5, the outpost on the open file, is a very juicy square for even, well, a knight of course usually. But there is also the square on c5, which appears to be weak. It has been weakened by this play on the queen side, a6 and b5. And we'll see that this can be actually important, because here Wesley So played h6, and after knight e4, well, it's not very difficult to understand that the knight is eyeing at this square here on c5, so black has to be very careful. And this is exactly what Wesley So didn't manage to be. He was not careful here. He played a very natural move, which turned out to be perhaps even the decisive mistake. Well, knight f6, you know, I've said that perhaps black would like to exchange some pieces. Knight f6 appears to be natural as well, but it allows d5. When white seizes the initiative, the knight is attacked here, and if it goes, it could allow knight e5. So that's certainly a bit unpleasant here. Well, the best move was rook a d8 here. Very natural as well. Rook a d8, and it's not easy for white to develop an initiative in the center, on the king side. So perhaps he should turn his attention to the queen side by playing a4. Especially now that the rook has left a8, it might make sense to open the a file. Knight b6. It's not easy for black. This position is generally quite difficult to handle. A small detail can make differences, and here after a takes b5, a takes b5, knight c3, bishop b4. Well, my feeling is that white is still in the driving seat here, but black has his chances as well. So I think this is the way Wesley So should have chosen instead of rook fe8. Why is rook fe8 so bad? Because it seems to be normal. You want to play rook a d8 and rook fe8 all the same. Well, the problem is that at the moment this pawn on f7 is still a little bit vulnerable on this long diagonal. And well, here Grischuk played bishop d2, very modest apparently, but he has a very different idea, which is to play rook c1 and knight c5, and then take back with the rook on c5. Wesley So didn't like this perspective, and his next move is very consequent with this. But here actually, if he plays, well, whatever, rook a d8, there comes rook c1, bishop f8, there comes rook c1 as well, and knight c5. The position is better for white. I would even say quite clearly better for white, but not as bad as what happened in the game for Wesley So. He played knight f6. He wishes to exchange the knight before it lands to c5. Grischuk played very cool. Rook c1. You know, I want to go to c5, and if you don't want to allow me, you have to take on e4. This is what Wesley So did, and now we can see the rook appearing on the fourth file. Bishop f6, intending to exchange rooks, after which black would probably be okay. But there is rook g4 here. I guess this rook lift to the fourth rank was definitely underestimated by the American player. Rook g4, it's already very difficult. We're basically threatening to take here on h6, of course. But it's not the only threat. There are numerous ideas for white here. Well, if he plays h5, this equals a important weakening of black's castle, and rook f4 can happen. You know, putting pressure against f7, of course, but perhaps even, you know, why not even sacrifice the exchange here on f6, forcing gf, and then you can see all these pawns here completely shattered. That would be quite terrible for black, and then, you know, knight h4 ideas, queen takes h5, everything is coming very easily for white. Well, Wesley So didn't like that. He played king h8. And here a beautiful move. I was actually in Berlin at this point commentating this game live together with Judith Polgar, and we were looking at several ways to attack for white, like bishop c2, trying to create a battery here, things like bishop c2, bishop b1, you know, queen c2 and mate. Of course, all of this looks very, very dangerous for black, and I believe that there were other ways. But when we saw Grischuk play rook c5, we immediately understood, okay, now it's almost over. This move is beautiful, rook c5. The rook uses, you know, after the other rook has been lifted to the 4th rank, and now the rook to the 5th rank, he wants to go to h5 actually, and after the rook is on h5, he wants to take here on h6 and mate, and there is very little black can do here. If he plays queen d6, well, rook h5 to see it in picture, bishop takes h6 is coming. If he tries, you know, if he tries knight e7, perhaps this would have been the best, I don't know, but you know, black at least loses a pawn. If white wants to take on f7, he can do it immediately, and he's just, you know, well, if not winning, he's at least very clearly better here. Rook h5 is also possible. Knight g8 and queen c1, just, you know, reinforcing the pressure against this pawn on h6. There's very little black can do here actually. He can try g6. And there is knight e5, very strong. Bishop takes, rook takes e5, and the bishop has disappeared, doesn't protect the king anymore. White is, objectively white is winning here. Well, maybe knight d8, but as well here, rook h5, rook e4, and bishop takes h6. At the very least, white is going to remain a pawn up and keep an attack here. We can safely state that he is winning, but after rook a d8, well, this was tricky by Wesley, so this move, rook a d8, he obviously understood he's lost, and he also understood why he's going to be lost. You know, it's coming to h6 very quickly. So he tried to play his last trump card here. This is a very speculative, but what else to do? Very speculative continuation. Queen c1, very good move. Knight takes d4, knight takes d4, and this idea rook e4, which was certainly foreseen by Wesley So when he played rook a d8 just before. Rook e4, he doesn't take back on d4, white would crash through with the attack. He goes for this, and he forces Grischuk to be accurate until the end. Now the path is narrow for white, but Grischuk found it. He let himself go down to 1 minute on his clock, but found this. Rook takes c7, the best move here. Queen takes d4, bishop e3, rook takes g4. This was Wesley So's idea, to sacrifice the queen, but taking it is not very easy, not very clear here. Rook takes g2, king f1, bishop takes d4. Well, first of all, I am a rook and a bishop for the queen, so it's not that terrible, and there is even a pawn. And rook takes f2 is coming. Actually, I can't even take the bishop here. Takes, check on a8, and check on f1, and I'm even winning the queen, well, without any compensation here. Black would be winning. So white has to be careful, and Grischuk found the best move here. Pawn takes g4, queen e4, the only move to keep the bishop protected, but at the same time he threatens mate here. f3, very cool, and it turns out Wesley So cannot protect his bishop on b7. He sacrificed a piece here. Well, he didn't really sacrifice it, he had to give it up, so he played queen b4. Well, I didn't really annotate the rest of the game, but it was played in time trouble by Grischuk. I think he could have finished off earlier, but basically here, bishop takes b2. You have to be slightly careful, of course, watch out for tactics. If you take, check, and black escapes with perpetual check here. You can see that. So Grischuk kept his cool, played queen f1, f6, queen f2, bishop e5, f4. Well, usually in time trouble, when in Grischuk's situation, you should play moves which keep control here. f4 is not really such a move. You open a bit lines, weaken squares against your own king. But okay, Grischuk knew what he was doing, and basically he never really showed nerves. Bishop d6, g5, another quite risky move, considering he was in time trouble here. Queen e4, queen f3, queen b1 check. He repeats move once. It's very good strategy in time trouble. Always repeat moves when you are better. King f2, bishop b4. Watch out for mate. Queen e1 here. So queen e2, queen e4, repeating moves again. Queen f3, queen b1, and now he reaches move 40. The time control is being made by the move king g3. A very good move, actually, preventing the mate and keeping everything under control, more or less. Well, f takes g5, king h2. The king is safe now, and it doesn't really matter if black has won back a pawn. White's material advantage is overwhelming, and he also have active pieces to attack. So, well, queen f5, rook f7, queen g6, f takes g5, bishop d6, and after king h3, black resigned. Well, not a great game by Wesley, so it's quite instructive to see how it went down from the move d5 on move 12, and then bit by bit his position deteriorated, but also because Grischuk played it really well. I hope you enjoyed this video. If this is the case, please like it and subscribe for my channel. Thank you very much for your attention.